Hello, friend. Elise here. Thanks for tuning in and subscribing to our show. On this episode, we welcome our actual brother, Will Luera. Will is the Director of Improvisation at Florida Studio Theater, Director of Big Bang Improv, incoming Artistic Director at Improv Asylum, and serves as the Artistic Director Emeritus of ImprovBoston. He is the co-creator of Healing Moments for Alzheimer's, a nonprofit organization that provides education, advocacy, and ministry for persons with dementia and their caregivers. Will tours globally as an improv comedy actor, instructor, and director, and performs and teaches regularly all across North America, South America, Europe, and Asia. On this episode, we discuss what it's like to be performers who grew up in immigrant cultures, and Will shares his experiences in traveling globally to teach and perform improv. He also shares his long-term experience in the industry and what it's been like to be a BIPOC professional, parent, and lifelong learner. And because we have the legend that is Will Luera with us, you better believe we have a well-rounded improv geek-out session where we touch on everything from the freeform format, the true and applied meaning of yes and so much more. Will is someone who has made a huge impact in my improv journey, and we cannot wait for you to hear about his philosophies and approaches to life and to improv. You ready? Let's do it! How you doing, Will?
Good. I'm very, very happy to be here on the Elise, Will, and John show.
How is the new year treating Will Luera?
New Year is treating me well so far. It's been a fun week. Just had my birthday a few days ago on the 3rd, and staying nice and busy. So getting ready for my wife's birthday in a few days. So all is good so far.
I feel like you're the only person I know that stayed extremely busy throughout the entire pandemic.
I got busier.
I know.
But I'm glad you brought this up because it actually made me do some self-reflection, this whole thing, because I'm like, why are you doing this to yourself, Will? Like what? Like honestly, I'm just like, am I trying to avoid something, right? Like because I think you know me, both of you know me. At least knows me pretty well. That I like to stay busy, and during a time when we were given permission from the world to actually take a step back, take a breath, and just sleep in and not do anything, I kind of did the opposite. I kind of leaned into it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna fill in this dead time with even more things. And I mean, I've taken on like a friend of mine was saying yesterday, she's like, Will, how many more things can you add to your titles? Because I'm just like, I'm just keeping myself busy. But you know, it's for me, it's a good opportunity. Like everybody else is kind of taking it easy. So not everybody else, but a lot of people are. And so I'm just trying to move forward, which has always been kind of in my nature.
What? So did you come up with an answer? Like, what is it that?
No, but I do think that I'm sure that there's something in me that is like trying to, I don't know. Like I honestly, I should go on a retreat or something and disconnect and figure out what I discover about myself. Cause I'm sure that I think I need to, for my own self-reflection, need to sort of just slow down. But that's just me. That's my self-analysis.
I can totally relate to it. Does it, like most things, is it surrounded with shame? Like if you take a break, you feel weird guilt or shame?
There is, man. That's a really, there is a little bit of shame in there. And I think like, especially anyone from immigrant cultures, like all three of us, I mean, we come from like, our parents, our grandparents. I mean, it's about working. It's like, you gotta work. And I am privileged to not have to pursue the same work that my predecessors did. But I think that culture is still built in. It's
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it kind of like one of my least favorite stereotypes out there. I'm gonna say like the lazy Mexican stereotype is one, but I think it goes beyond that. It's like the lazy immigrant stereotype, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, where does that come from? It comes from the fact that like immigrants are working 2, 3, 4 jobs. So the only time you see them not working, they're resting.
It's exhaustion.
Yeah, it's like because they're getting ready for the next job.
Yeah.
Right. Anyways.
So what's your favorite stereotype?
I mean, I got one, but I don't know if I do have one.
I feel like I feel the same way in terms of coming from immigrant culture, because when I became a lawyer, I think my dad was like, oh yes, my daughter is a lawyer. And then when I was like, oh, I'm going to quit and I want to be an actor now who doesn't make a lot of money. Okay. He was like, wait, huh? What? So I feel that.
Yeah, no, it took a while for my parents to finally like understand that my theater job was my real job. Like for a while it was always, because I mean, I worked in computer science for about 17 years and before I got a full-time theater job. And they, even once I made that transition, it was always still like, so are you going to get a computer job soon? And I'm like, no, this is it. This is my full-time job. The thing that you've been calling that you kept calling a hobby for 17 years
right.
is now my job. Yeah.
Man. Right. That thing, that never-ending well, we keep chasing for their approval, but it never shows up. We keep pulling up that bucket.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like approval. Shame.
No.
Yeah, let's send it back down.
Yeah.
So you did 17. I know this about you, right? You did improv for 17 years and then you transitioned fully into improv. But so when did you start? What year did you start doing improv exactly?
Professionally, 1997. In college, like my first real experience was the spring of 1993.
Amazing. Because one of the things that you and I also told John about was that, like, I feel like you're, for me, one of the heavy hitters, the only heavy hitter that I know personally that is a person of color, right?
Yep.
In the, you know, the of the famous ones, right? We have the Joe Bills, we have the Dave Razowskis, we have the Jimmy Carranes, we have all of these, you know, big names, Keith Johnstone, right? Del Close, all the huge names. But I feel like for me, at least, this is the only reflection, and I've been lucky enough to be like, oh, I work with Will Luera, the only one. So can you talk a little bit about what that was like in the beginning as a person of color in improv, and then becoming somebody that was so well known and world traveler?
Yeah, thank you for first of all, thank you for saying that. It's very, I appreciate that. I feel very lucky at this point to have had a prolonged improv career. But yeah, when I first started, I mean, it was not very, I mean, I'm not gonna say that it's too different now, but it was very much a white person's world. And, you know, I just happened to stumble into it. And even then, like I noticed, okay, there's not that many of, you know, not just me, but just in general, like people of color anywhere. Right. And I mean, there were a few here and there. Like I think like Sean Landry was one of the first people that I'm like, oh wow, okay. There are people of color, not only a people of color, but a troupe of color working together in Chicago. But that's it. Like very few of us around. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to have longevity in my career, along with some of the other folks. I don't think that the one difference, for whatever reason, I'm not going to put this on anything right now, but I still don't think that I look at some of my peers and some of the people that maybe came into the industry a little bit ahead of me. And like, they definitely have the name recognition that I'm just like, you know, they set up a workshop and they draw in immediately a group of people. Yeah. Where I still know that I still need to work at it a little bit. Right. So, you know,
so here's my question about that.
Yeah.
Do they travel all over the world 4 times over?
Yeah, that's the thing though, right? Like before any of these people were traveling, like I was traveling. Like
okay, so that answers that question. Did they invent their own format of improv?
No, right. Maybe they did. Maybe they did. Yeah, I don't know.
They did not invent freaking Big Bang's format.
Yeah.
Form. Okay. Okay. So
I see what's happening. Elise is pretty much telling Whitey, sit down.
Yeah.
You put in this kind of work, Whitey.
That kind of bothers me that like you've literally said in this conversation, you've said, it doesn't kind of bother me. It does bother me. In this conversation, you've said you keep yourself busy. You're always working. You've invented a freaking format. You go around the world 4 times over. You've booked all of your passports. You've had to get new passports because of how much travel. And yet it's like somebody will be like, I'm going to do a workshop and I'm going to do some notes. Yeah. And then, you know, that gets all of the attention. So that's just an observation that I'm having. That's kind of pissing me off.
Like part of what bothered me for a little bit. Again, I was, I started the global traveling in 2004, and it wasn't until like, I think 2010 when I started to see more and more people doing it. But for about 5 or 6 years, I was just out there, and I would go to festivals and with some of my team members, and we would be Team USA because we were the only people going to Europe, Latin America, Asia. Like we would just be and like I still have jerseys that say USA that Elise is wearing, right? Because I needed to get them because that's what we were called. But it does like the one thing that like my goal was never to how could I put it? Like I never wanted to I wanted to learn from them as much as they were learning from me. And that was a big thing because what I think happened after like the 2010 is that a lot of the American improv started to get pushed out. Like it's like, you got to do it our way, right? Yeah, this is the format. Everybody's got to do a Herald or whatever, right? Nothing against a Herald, but it kind of started to feel that way. It's like you got to learn it the American way. And a part of like my whole theory, my whole thing was like, it's not about doing it the American way. It's just for me, it's like I want to learn what you do. You learn what I do, and let's create together. And honestly, that's like a lot of the philosophy behind freeform as well. Freeform is meant to be malleable around whatever community culture group that I'm working with.
Yeah. We gotta just for the folks who don't know what freeform is. What is freeform?
Sure, yeah, like the.
So the best improv format ever.
So underneath it all, like if I were to put one phrase under it is, I used to say follow the funny. All right, that used to be my thing, and I'm like, it's not even follow the funny because I don't want to make it. I don't want to center it around comedy. It's really about following the fun, and then I would even say even more, follow the joy. Like whatever is on stage that you find like fun or interesting or cool or like I want to do that. In freeform, we teach you all of these tools to be like, how am I going to isolate this little thing and then explode an entire new universe inside of that thing, right? And the other goal, so that's kind of like the high level overview. But underneath that, it's like screw formats. Like, don't get stuck to one way of doing this. Like, don't be like, it's gotta be short form, it's gotta be long form, it's gotta be this, it's gotta be that, it's gotta be narrative. And I love all those things. And what freeform basically says is, hey, everybody, come here, bring whatever thing you do. Oh, you're Johnstone, great. You're Spolin, cool. You're IO, you're UCB, you're Annoyance, right? You're Huge, you're FST, whatever. Just get in here and play. The only thing we want you to do is A, respect everybody's differing perspective, and B, let's just have fun together, right? And all of the freeform, in all of my freeform classes, that's all we're doing is I'm just teaching you tools to be like, hey, let's just find a way to follow the joy and follow the fun together. And no two shows are ever the same. And that's a big part of what I do. It's like even in my classes, I make my students invent warm-ups. Like in week 1, they'll invent warm-ups. In week 2, you have to invent new warm-ups. The stuff you did in week 1 that you loved, out the window. You got to invent new ones because I want to keep the improv fresh. Like it's got to always be new. All right. So anyways, that's freeform in kind of a big nutshell.
Yeah. What I've found every time I've performed or done any sort of work with freeform is that it creates its own language. And that made me feel this is why it's my favorite format, is because it makes me feel included in wherever I am, because I don't have a lot of reference to like American references, things that people saw on TV or characters or whatever. And in freeform, literally the reference is right in front of you.
Yeah.
So everybody's speaking the same language.
Yeah.
And that's what I really love about it.
And it's been fun to like, I mean, in Europe has been like the most accepting community of it. Like whenever I teach it there, they're like, wow. And I'm not talking about Europe, like not just English speaking countries, but all the different countries. They've been very accepting to it. I have a nice supportive group in Israel as well. Good supportive group in Latin America as well. So it's been fun to see these little pockets pop up. Yeah.
That's so cool. Man. That thank you for breaking that down. That's so necessary too, especially when we're talking about different people, different points of view. How like there is a lot of flowers given to and a lot of attention given to people that can master a difficult format. Nothing wrong with it. It's cool.
Yeah.
But I love what you're speaking about here too, where it's like the format it's not the end goal. It's not to perfect that. It's right. More about like meeting people where they're at. And then how can everything become a gift? It sounds like all tenets that I feel like BIPOC people should have from K through 8, at least instilled in them. Honestly, it should be mandatory. The feeling that like whatever you bring is going to be dope. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
We're all in this together, and absolutely nothing is corny. You cannot fail. This is about fun. I cannot think of one place K through 8 where that is sanctioned, where there's like actual sanctioned play. And I've not had that kind of with such clarity and practical like directions that you give. You know, I haven't had that from a white instructor. I'm trying to be fair, but I don't think so. I don't think. Yeah, a lot of them base it kind of, where their education is from, and they kind of, walk a couple of blocks from that street and then do their own thing. But you're trying to.
He made a whole ass format. Is what I'm trying to say.
And it was like, and I know I've talked about it before in our various conversations, but like, I was very much influenced, pushed, inspired by my early experiences in improvisation, right? Like I talk a lot about part of my story as an improv director and teacher. I always say like, I grew up in Chicago, but never knew about improv until I moved out of Chicago. And it bothers me when I hear people, I would just go ahead and say, when I hear white people say like, I grew up in Chicago, so of course I went to go see improv. I'm like, of course you did, right? But like, and the thing is, I lived closer to Second City than most of these people because I lived right in the city, not in the suburbs. I lived right in the city. Never heard about Second City, right? And it wasn't until I moved away that I found out Chicago was the mecca of improvisation. So so that part influenced me. I think another part that influenced me as well. A few things, right? Another one was that the whole idea of like the first unusual thing in a scene, which we're all many times we're trained on that, right? Like look for the first unusual thing. Yeah. When you're the only non-white person that
everything is unusual.
Everything is unusual, right? You are the unusual thing because you're non-white, or in my case, I'm non-white. I grew up in the ghetto, right? And I'm a first generation American. So of course, any idea that I come up with is going to be unusual. So for them. Right. What would happen to my white teammates is that whatever I came up with, it's like, oh, there's the unusual thing. That and I'm just like, and at that point I'm just like, okay, I need to find a way to reframe this so that I don't want to be the unusual. In fact, I'm not the unusual thing because this is normal for me, right? What you guys are talking about is unusual to me, right? Yeah. And so. A lot of what I teach now is like, hey, whatever you bring, like that is, if what you're bringing comes from your personal experience and you're bringing it onto the stage, I want everybody else to respect that and honor that. Like this is the normal thing for them. Let them invite you into that world and let's go that. And instead of calling them out on it and be like, oh. Right, you're weird right now. Like, so I had enough of that, like especially in the early 2000s, that it kind of that a lot of my freeform stuff kind of came from that. It's like, all right, that's another big part of freeform. Like if you start to like pop the hood and look underneath it, there's a big part about it empowering. Like we should all be able to come to the stage as we are and not be ashamed of that. Bring whatever you have.
Yeah.
Along the road to having that format, there's a bunch of instances. There's a bunch of occurrences that happen to kind of shape us, to kind of guide you towards the free form. It doesn't just happen overnight, One example is someone being like, oh, let's follow the weird or the funny thing. And then people are just waiting for Will.
Yeah, because I'm different.
So then those are like moments. What are some other like, or who do you check in with during the 90s,
Oh, man, yeah.
Right? Who are you bouncing ideas with to be like, hey, am I crazy? Because I grew up in Chicago, but I'm just not hearing about this shit. Why are they coming at me like aggressive? Because I'm new to hey, improv isn't everywhere in Chicago.
Yeah.
So if I were to look at early influences, so I think and it kind of came in waves, right? So like one was I think this might be a typical answer for a lot of folks, right? Like Joe Bill was one of my early ones because it kind of just like. I was like, oh, wow. He was one of the first ones that kind of showed me like, okay, improv is not just games. Fine. Right. Then like Rick Napier followed soon after that and be like, okay, it's much more than that. But I would say that one of the people that I was very fortunate, I only took one workshop with this person, one masterclass with this person. And I'm sure we've all heard of Martin DeMott, right? And Martin DeMott, old, from Second City. And like, he's like one of the OGs, going like into 70s, 80s. Okay. The masterclass I took with him showed me that you could teach improv with kindness, like with grace, like really just like and heart. And I took a 2-hour workshop at the Chicago Improv Festival with him. I think it was 98 or 99. And like, that was one of those moments where I'm just like, oh, wow. Like, okay, this isn't just about laughs. Like this is about vulnerability, right? I am opening myself up to you, and I'm opening my mind and my heart up to my fellow cast members. I make myself very vulnerable right now, and like kind of it's only a 2-hour workshop because he died soon after that, and so it was this whole idea of like improv is a very vulnerable art that underneath it, the idea of like whatever yes and yes and there we've seen people turn those two words into a very toxic tool, right? Yeah. But he like showed me it's like underneath there's heart and grace and love of being able to say, I hear what you are saying, and I'm gonna go ahead and join you in the exploration you're going through right now. Yeah. So like those three people were again, like I think Joe and Mick unboxed the technical part of improv for me. Right. Yeah. And then Martin showed me the heart. He's like, hey, this is there is heart in the art that we do. Then soon after that, I mean, there was Burn Manhattan was a big group out of New York. They're now called Centralia. They kind of showed me the freeform part of it. They kind of gave me those tools of how to move forward with freeform. And you just reminded me about an early influence, right? And like I love how like the story of improv is rooted in this, literally like where I grew up in the south side of Chicago. And I say literally because a mile away from where I grew up was the Hull House. And the Hull House is again where Viola Spolin and Neva Boyd worked. And I used to go there on field trips as a kid, not knowing that, man, this is where improv was born. This is where like they were using it to teach immigrant kids, right? Like to explore the spirit of play. And so that was one of those early influences that I didn't realize until later in life. Like I remember going there on field trips, and then like 30 years later, you realize like that it's tied into the world of improv, and you're like, oh wow, okay, that hit me back here, and now it took 30 years for that harvest to appear, but it paid off.
So all of these influences were necessarily it was really up to you to observe and find it, right? When it was presented to you, versus you having another improviser for you to like bounce things off of. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah. Who's the person you go ahead and call and you're like, can you believe this fuck shit? Can you believe this?
This is John. I don't know where John got this term from, but it is literally one of my favorite things on the planet. Is fuck shit.
I like this. Yeah. Can you believe this fuck shit?
Yeah.
There's no working definition, but see the capital coup for, I don't know, a working definition. If you just want an example of fuck shit, that's some fuck shit.
Yeah.
Ultimate example of fuck shit.
That was a fuck shit. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I want to see that 2021 Merriam-Webster dictionary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fuck shit, noun, verb, adjective, all of it.
Universal term.
Yeah.
All of the things you see depicted here.
Yeah.
So did you have anybody, because again, like that's just so tiring. I feel like not so tiring in universally, but like for me, when I have to derive my own definitions out of things that are being given to me versus somebody just directly talking to somebody and saying, hey, I have this experience, do you have this experience? And then learning from that. So did you have anything like that you were able to lean on?
I'll admit that not for a while. I feel like I was kind of on my own for a little bit.
Did you know that you were on your own?
I not at first, but then after a while you're like, I don't have anyone to really talk, like, am I crazy here, or is this shit really happening? Right.
Yeah.
Over time I started to develop some relationships where I could share like those fears, right? That anger, and that I could be like, hey, what do you think about this? And I do have a friend in Boston that I still communicate with, and like every time something comes up, he's kind of pulling out. He used to be a big improv guy, now he's pulling out of it, but he's still someone that I go to, and I'm like, hey, am I wrong to be feeling like this right now? I need your, and he is a BIPOC improviser, so I know that like we share that perspective. And I do have and I'll be honest, I have a very similar relationship with Elise, except that it's a little different, I think, because Elise and I work together. So I kind of am reluctant to initiate. And so, but Elise will be the initiator. Elise will kind of be like, hey,
what the fuck?
What the fuck? And then part of me is like, okay, I'm glad you asked, because I didn't want to initiate this. So, yeah. And but Elise is intuitive in that way. But yeah, but in both cases, again, we're talking about people of color, right? And I'll be honest, like John, the forum that you and I are part of on Wednesday nights has become that. Like I've come into that, and when I've been able to make it, I've come into that being like, man, I've got this thing that is bothering me. I need to bounce it off of someone, right? And I think one of them I'll never forget was. And Elise knows this about me. I mean, I just have a habit, tendency, whatever, to be late, right? And then one day I arrived 10 minutes early for a meeting, and then I didn't get out of my car. Why? Because I was afraid of bothering the person. The person was a straight white rich guy, but like part of me was like, I don't want to bother him. And I'm like, Will, what is that? Like, why are you doing that to yourself? Anyways, so that forum has been very helpful for me. And I remember I opened, because it happened the same day as one of our forums, and I remember I opened it up with that. I'm like, hey guys, I just went through this a few hours ago. Please help me work it out. So that it's been a gift. That Wednesday forum has been a gift.
Amen.
I think for everybody, for even us out here too.
Yeah, I want to circle back. So the homie the third person that talked about like teaching and playing from
Martin DeMott. Yeah,
Martin DeMott. So he was kind of able to help you see that you could play from your heart and play with care and kindness. And as we already know, that's dangerous. For BIPOC folks, it can be. It can be.
It's scary.
We're trying to do risk aversion all the time. We're assessing risk, and we're trying to reduce the amount of risk in any situation. But when you're playing from that place of your heart, I don't know. And, I've been on this kind of kick of like, well, where are you grounded at spiritually, or what, you know what I mean? Like what, because if you're playing from this high road, essentially, a lot of the times, you're just kind of tuned to not focus on the microaggressions, not like you're avoiding, but because you're focused on how do I see this human being? How do I be all the things that we like about a good scene partner? You know, when you're playing from that place, not that you aren't aware, but you're just, you know what I'm saying? I think it's kind of like you're constantly having to pick your battles, and for you to maintain, not saying I'm sure you've had to have a couple of like, you know, mental breakdowns along the journey of how many years, you know, and such a white, but I think something we can guess is that you're like grounded in that place of, I think, generosity and care and kindness. Who are you praying to? What's happening?
Who's that? Because we gotta talk to this person. Like, I want some of that too.
I need that.
Who you praying to? I need that connect, bro.
Yeah.
Who's the
I'm
hookup?
all out of external validation. I don't have no more. I need that.
I love that. Great question. Like I'll be honest. Like I grew up Catholic, like many people, right? Where am I now with that? I think I heard Elise speak in an earlier episode, right? Like the universe, right? I was a physics major in college, so I was always like into the sciences. So the idea of like the universe, you know, and I went to a Catholic college, and I used to get into discussions with people. I'm like, what if the universe is God? Like, and I used to tell people, I'm like watching sunshine off of a snow-peaked mountain. You could break all of that down into a formula. You could break it down to like the frequency of light, right? The angle of the sun, right? The material of the mountain, the condensation at the peak. All of that could be broken down scientifically, right? But all together, it creates this moment of beauty, right? That moment where you're like, I see God in this wonderful moment right now. So for me, for a long time, the universe was God, and maybe it still is. That being said, like I was very much framed under the, you know, for better or for worse, under the rules of Catholicism. I did at some point in college, and I think this is one of the things when you go, I went to a Jesuit college and a Jesuit high school, right?
This is the 90s, 97?
This is like, from 88 to 92, then 92 to 97. So this was my high school and college. Like, this is all like, this is my education here. And
that's a major year to live. You left when the Fugees came out. That's a big.
Yeah, I got to see the Fugees in college. You were talking about.
Shut up.
Yeah, you got to see you were talking about the Fugees in a recent thing that I was listening to, and I'm like, I remember seeing them at my school cafeteria, Boston College. Like,
oh my Lord.
Yes, yeah. Like they performed. We used to. It was called The Rat. It was underground, and the Fugees did a show there, and it was. I mean, like, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is still one of my favorite albums ever. So yeah.
And if it's not, I don't trust you.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I remember so that was. I am grateful, like, to have been. I mean, I think we're all grateful of when we came of age or whatever, but I'm really grateful, like, of that era of music.
I know you're on the thing, but I just want to get off the highway a little more. That era you were in, man. Okay, first off, the amount of unlearning and undoing of toxic masculinity fuck shit that you've had to, like, we don't talk about it, but you know, it's like it's problematic. The rap that came out, but it's the best. You had Tupac. You had Biggie, you know, all in your college
Certainly,
years.
I negotiate my feminism when I'm listening to music, old school music, because I love the music so much.
Yes.
That I can't. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Give up everything? Like, it's at the time it wasn't as woke as it is now. It's not an excuse for it. It's still fuck shit, but it's hard to negotiate it.
Yeah, break that down. How did you listen to Biggie and then turn around and zip zap zap with these white guys? It was. I mean, every BIPOC person is familiar with this.
That is a great question.
It is a shift in a lot of things, but also, you know, I understand you were also in college too, right? So there's a different dynamic, right? Like you kind of, you know, you're on the team, you're playing. It's a little town. If you live there. I don't know. You may have been one of the students that went home for the weekend, but I don't think so. I think you stayed home, kid.
Was it for me or Elise?
For you.
Oh, for me. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, so I went to school in Boston, so I was definitely far away from. I was far away from home. But yeah, well, first of all, was it Snoop that recently said he's no longer using the B word, right?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh wow, that's good considering he must have went off in his heyday, had his grand finale with Gayle King, but okay.
Yeah, I thought I recently. Now I'm looking it up. I don't know if we all are.
Me too.
I thought he recently said that. Anyway, going back to so I think we were talking about like higher spirit,
belief, higher power, and
higher
your experience in college.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So that's kind of where like the idea of the universe and all of that was. And also going to a Jesuit college taught me this whole idea of like liberation theology and a lot of stuff where you're suddenly like, oh wait, so man, Jesus was really about like helping out the poor. Like it's not about, because a lot of people focus on the scripture of like, hey, build up your kingdom on earth before you go to heaven, right? But then what I started to take in, and a lot of my friends at the time were like, no, look at man, like Jesus was hanging out with the homeless. He was hanging out with all like the fringe of society, and that had a big old impact on me. And then I carried a lot of that forward of like, hey, whoever's on the fringe, those are the people that define who we are. So we got to bring them on board, right? And that's just not at church or mass or your neighborhood, but that ends up being your improv theater, etc. Right? Am I still much of a Catholic person? Not really. I still don't define that, but that gave me my compass. That was my moral compass at the beginning. Just like, some people might have Harry Potter as their moral compass, fine. If the Force, if that's your thing, or any other religion, let that be your moral compass. That defined my moral compass, and I kind of carried a lot of that into it, into the way I run an improv theater as well. Like embrace the fringes.
I want to point out that when you were talking about the mountain and the the way the sun hits it and breaking down all of the tiny little molecules of it, and then finding the big package, like. That is also a definition of freeform.
Yes.
Like an exact definition of freeform is exactly what you were describing. It was exactly that.
Yeah.
Also, my institution broke up. Otherwise, I'd still be with it. Rockefeller Records would have been my guiding institution. But
that would have been your doorknob.
Yeah. They did not sustain.
I have a question, because now I feel like we're talking about all of this. We've talked about now from when you were in college through becoming a professional improviser, and now still dealing with now doing the inclusion forums and all of this starting to kind of come together in terms of being a person of color, Latinx or Latino man in improv, right? So I want to tie that into your world, your traveling, because you said earlier that that you used to wear USA jersey, and like when you and I went to Colombia, we wore USA jerseys. So I'm wondering now, in all of this trajectory you've had, keeping all of this history in mind, what did it feel like back, like when you first started traveling with USA jerseys?
Yeah. What
did it feel like to put it on then, and what does it feel like to put it on now? Because when we went to Colombia, I felt like I was gonna break out in a rash in that USA jersey. And anytime that people would be like, "Oh, this is Elise from USA," I was like, "No, I'm Cuban American. Thank you."
Yeah, because it was like, that was definitely during Trump.
Yeah, and they gave us the festival hats were red, like red hats. They had the festival name on it, but this was in Colombia. And when Will and I first got the hats, we looked at each other. We're like, we can't wear this shit.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh man. So when I first started this global traveling, right? So it was during W, right, was the first part.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, like, so a moment that kind of still sticks with me is somebody at a festival really coming down hard on W back in the day. And I was in agreement. I was like, oh yeah, everything you're saying, I agree with, because this is the Gulf War stuff and all that, right? And I was like, okay, I get what you're saying. And then at a certain point, and again, I'm reflecting on something like 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
At a certain point, I'm just like, wow, yeah, I have to, and I'm speaking as somebody, I have a very complicated relationship with patriotism, which we could get into as well. But at that point, I was just like, man, like, you're really shitting on my country right now. And I really had to embrace this thing of like I've got to really accept not only the good but also the ugly of my country. Like I've got, and I'll tell you one thing: becoming a parent has really even amplified that. Because as a parent, it's like you got to accept the good and the bad of your children, right? Like your children could do some dumb things or some nasty things or say some things, and you're like,
it's their journey.
I'm like, I can't disown my kid, right?
Yeah.
But I kind of have to accept it. But yeah, so like back then so that was kind of a thing for me. I mean, during Obama's years, it was great. I'm like, yeah, all right, cool. Yeah, Team USA all the time. Then one of the before Colombia, I went to Saudi Arabia, and I went to Saudi Arabia about a week after Trump was elected, and that was a very interesting trip because everybody was asking me about that. Everybody was like, and these are all like Saudi Arabians, and they're like, what the hell did you guys do? Like, how the hell did this happen? Right? And so they were all just asking me, and that was part of the roller coaster ride. That you're like, I am wearing this jersey that impacts the world, and it is like it's either like a point of pride or it's a scarlet letter. Like I am wearing this thing, and I've got to, if I'm going to choose to continue to wear this, right? If I'm going to wear it for the next, when politics goes more in my favor, I got to be ready to accept the good, the bad, and the ugly of this. And like that's been a tough thing. Like I'm like, I gotta. Yeah. If and that same thing with Colombia, man. Like being down there, it was tough. It was like putting the hard. USA jersey during the last 4 years was a tough thing. But at the same time, like in regards to who I am, a lot of people will say like, "Will, you love conflict," and I come across as a very nice guy. I really do. But
you love conflict. That's the last thing that I would ever say about you.
The thing is, like, I'm attracted to it. Okay. Like, I'm like,
I can see that.
I don't like to fight, but if there's disagreement, I want.
You find yourself in it.
I'm like, let's man. If we need to talk for 8 hours, let's get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
And so
I'm the same way.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And it isn't. It's not about trying to. I think it's just that we are. I find that now, getting older, it's not that I like confrontation as much as I like being curious about where this is gonna go. What are we gonna discover with this like back and forth? I'm right. You think you're right. Great. Together, let's annoy.
I like that. I like that. I'm right. You think you're right.
Yeah. We're gonna figure some stuff out. But yeah, I get it. I totally understand what it's like to look at that shiny object. Most people are like, no, don't pick that. Why would you? Now's not an appropriate time to. But I don't know. Seems like a good time as always to kind of. Yeah, so where were you going? I jumped in.
No, I love it. I'm glad that we connected on that. I don't get me wrong. I mean, there are some people that are just outright jerks and asses and don't deserve my grace. Right. But then there are other people that are, and I don't mean this in the negative way, in the positive way, some people that are ignorant. Like they just don't have the knowledge, or they're naive, or they're more likely they are just afraid of gaining new knowledge. And so I am the type of person that I'm just like, okay, I am not going to write you off. I'm not going to silence you or ignore you. I'm going to talk. I want to talk to you about this. And I want to see how far we can go with this. to kind of get to an understanding, right? And yeah,
you heard it here, folks. Keith Johnstone and Will Luera are beefing. It is a beef of our century.
Oh, don't get me started. I mean, this is not Keith. Keith is a great instructor. There are definitely people out there in the improv world that I'm just like, man, like I'm waiting for the moment to beef it out with certain people. Because
tell me, okay, without saying names, what is some of the things or qualities you see that you're just like, oh, I need to have a sit down with this motherfucker right here.
I have an idea. Instead of doing rap we should have an improv versus, okay? Like the Elise and John show is going to start hosting improv battles. I'm just kidding. That's not going to happen. But maybe, yes, it is.
Like, this is me in St. Louis, 1999. I did an improv show at a workshop. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Will.
No,
what is the thing that
I think
gives
Elise
you pet
knows
peeve?
one of my beefs, but I do. There are a lot of people out there who are, in my opinion, I mean, they are brilliant improvisers. They're brilliant improv teachers and directors. I will not take that away from them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that they are rooted in a place of kindness. And I sometimes see them post or say things that I'm just like, okay, I'm not taking anything away from your improv, but you are kind of a jerk. And this might just be like my freeform sensibilities, but whenever I see anybody kind of be like, this is the way and the only way,
right?
I am right. Everybody else is an asshole. Like when I see people do that, I'm just like, yeah. Now that is that, and what bothers me is that when you use your status as an improv teacher and maybe even an improv guru to force that. Because then you're not leaving space for a lot like alternate perspectives and alternate ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not leaving any space to be challenged. Like if you're coming in and saying, I am right and everybody else is wrong. All right, okay. Then what am I like? Okay, then give me the brain dump and I'll stay completely quiet, right?
Yeah.
Now, how many of these folks are white men?
Oh my gosh, John, you took it right out of my mouth.
They are all white men. They're
all of them.
All of them. The ones that I have beefs with. And here's the sad thing, and maybe this is the part. So I like conflict. So I'm going back to like I can't wait for me to have the conversation with them. But then the part of me that hates conflict is I am not going to go seek it. Like I'm not going to go like but
start typing shit on
when the opportunity comes up, then I'm going to be like, okay, now let's have this talk.
Yeah.
And that's assuming that they're going to be willing to hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they Will needs an excuse, like a perfect opportunity, which is just, I don't know, what are the odds of that? Or they need to come for Elise or somebody close.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, that's it.
That's it.
I'm going.
They won't come to Elise, bro, because they won't make it to the conversation.
Oh! Right. You hear that, Keith Johnstone? The Elise and John show is beefing with Keith Johnstone.
No.
He know what he
did. Oh man, yeah. Keith Johnstone's Instagram stories right now. Oh man, no. His Snapchats right now. Oh no.
Who would have knew Keith was an op? Who would have knew?
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I think happens in these perspectives of the people that get very rigid about their beliefs in improv. I think that the reason why in my mind, it goes straight to, are they white men, is because their whole lives have been mostly, from what I know, and I'm generalizing here, have been in their worlds. So they don't have peripherals, right? So like I was in a musical improv workshop one time, and somebody came into the scene with me. I had a scene partner that was coming in. We were going to do a scene together, and it was a woman, and she came in, and we were going to be cheerleaders, and she immediately started talking about getting her boobs done. Like, oh, I'm going to get my boobs done. And then I decided in that moment, I'm going to switch the role, I'm going to move out of this because I don't want to have another scene with two women being cheerleaders talking about the tits. Like, I just didn't need to do it. And the white... we just didn't need to, and it wasn't even like it was gonna be like we could have had a whole conversation about materialism and surgery and all of that stuff, but for her she had an idea. Yeah, she had an idea and she wanted to stick to this. Like she was gonna have a superficial conversation about her boobs, getting her boobs done, and we're cheerleaders and we're caricatures of cheerleaders and stereotypes. So I started to take that and tried to I took what she said, I accepted it, and I tried to veer the conversation to be about a cheerleading competition. And the teacher stopped everything. He was like, she came in and talked about boobs. Like, you have to talk about boobs. And I'm like, I'm not going to talk about boobs because let me explain to you why I did this.
Yeah.
It is because I'm a woman and I don't want to be in another scene like this. And I don't want to perpetuate that. I accepted her gift and I added on to it. I just changed the direction a little bit. And he was like, yeah, but no, you have to do the scene that way. And we stood there in this class back and forth. I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a white man because to him, he's like, why can't you just do the scene about boobs?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to me, it's like, it's because there's not much peripheral or understanding that there are a million other perspectives than what they have.
Yeah.
Again, generalizing. There are plenty of people, plenty of white people out there that don't behave like that. But if we're talking about the epidemic, then that's what I see.
And I think like that's a great example. I was talking earlier about the toxification.
Toxification. Is it a verb?
Talkies.
The talkies of yes and is exactly that. Like that. I mean that's a great example of how we've allowed this beautiful art form, in my opinion, to be toxicified in certain places, and people have done that. Like it's like, okay, I'm throwing out an idea which should be yes-anded, and this is not against this, this one person, your scene mate, right? But the fact that we allow it. So I think Elise, who knows this because she teaches my curriculum, right? In level 1, week 2, we talk about yes and yes and, but one important aspect that is in that curriculum is that it is okay to say no. If you are not comfortable with the scene as an actor, not as a character, as an actor, if you're not comfortable, it is okay to say no and deflect the scene to go in a different direction. And in that curriculum, I try to offer up the tools and the dialogue, etc., for that, because that is important. And like one thing that I've realized in my improv curriculums is that, we talk about yes and yes and all of that, and great, awesome. But yes and yes and is not just a character tool, which is what we teach it as. It is a character saying yes and yes and, but it's also an actor tool, and it is an actor giving you consent, right? The actor is saying, I agree to move forward in this scene with you. Why? Because I trust you. And I think that is a big part of the yes and yes. Again, opening up the hood, right? Nice shiny yes and the car on the outside. Let's look under the hood. Underneath that, there is consent in the scene, right? And I think that consent has been ignored for too long, which has led to the toxicity, the talkies of yes and yes and.
Amen. Yes. Now, I would want to know what are some of these little tiny specific things that got you from lily pad to lily pad, along your journey. We talked about the spiritual side. We talked about, some philosophies, some core philosophies that you have. So I'm assuming we're basing it in that, but like one example could be, I remember I needed a car like 3-4 years ago, and somebody in my community was just like, oh, don't worry about it. We're going to make a GoFundMe, John. And boom, next thing you know, in like 2 days, I had a 1993 Volvo 240, all red, hipster mobile. All the hipsters came up to me. It was like, what's up? What is that? That's cool. I was like, get out of here, white boy. You don't know nothing about this Volvo. Get out of here.
The Volvo out here.
You know what I'm saying? No, I think I forgot that, like, along the journey, while we are BIPOC and we are doing this crazy art that our parents think is ridiculous and selfish, and they think we have the audacity.
My dad straight up told Will Luera that he doesn't like improv.
Yeah. Honestly, he's just saying what all of them are thinking. Like all the immigrant parents are like,
think.
They're making a career out of what we do every day. This is great. I'm so happy. we studied for that. No, I wanted to say, so what were some of these little things, maybe advice, little gems, but I know some people are just like, I don't want to give advice. That's uncomfortable. But what are some things that you saw to be like, man, I'm so happy I use that resource, or whether it's like talk therapy or, what are the things that you use as a resource?
Oh, that's a great question.
Were you married a lot of it? Were you know?
No, marriage in my improv life is a relatively new. So I've been married for we're going on 11 years soon, and so I've been doing improv for 24 years. So a little bit,
Kobe.
Yeah, yeah. So a little bit less than half. So what has gotten me through it? I hope you don't mind if I just sort of just free flow think my way through this.
By all means.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope that's okay. Okay, thank you.
Hell yeah. You hear that, Keith Johnstone? We're letting people just free flow. Keith.
Cool. So I'll just begin going back to my first artistic director. The first artistic director to hire me was BIPOC, a black artistic director called Ron Jones. He was at the artistic director of ImprovBoston that brought me in, and I think that was big that was formative. Yeah. It's
Ron Jones was a black artistic director.
Yes, he was. Do you know Ron?
I don't. That's why I'm like,
that's a problem.
Yeah. Ron Jones was like the artistic director of ImprovBoston, and he came in, and I ended up replacing him. Unfortunately, like the board handled that very poorly. I feel like that's of course they did. Right, the board handled that very poorly. But he is the person who hired me and was very formative in my early years. And now he runs an organization called the Black Jew Dialogues, and it's basically it was started by him and a Jewish man, kind of running the parallels between the Jewish and the Black experience. And he goes around all over the country doing this. So yeah, the Black Jew Dialogues. Yeah. So
John's freaking out.
So yeah, Ron Jones, former artistic director of ImprovBoston. So yeah, look that up. And if you need an introduction, I will make that introduction for you. But so meeting him was important. And then I talked a bit about freeform. I've also we talked about travel. So here's the thing. I have this whole thing about earning a scene. I talk a lot about earning a scene. So what does that mean? For me, there's three ways to earn a scene that you do on an improv stage, and I'm going to go backwards from the way that I teach them, because it'll be better for your answer. So one way is that you get invited into the scene, right? An example of that is Will has a lifetime of experience of what Mexican birthday parties are like, right? So I can invite John into my scene about a Mexican birthday party, therefore giving him permission to interact with me in this world that I've created that might be unfamiliar to him, but I'm saying, John, join me in this world, right? So that's number one. Number two, in regards to earning a scene, is being inspired by something earlier in the show or earlier in the scene. Maybe if it's an opening of a long form or whatever, I'm being inspired by that and I'm making direct reference to that. The third thing, which is actually the first thing that I teach, is life experience, right? And so I am inspired. This scene is being inspired by actual life experience that I've been through. And the reason why I bring that is because the reason why I say that last is to answer your question. That stuff that has gotten me through, it has been it's been people, because I am very careful of delineating the fact that I work with a lot of my friends. Yeah, I work with a lot of friends, and I try not to cross that too much. I try to respect the boundaries, right? So I feel that if you cross over too much, it can get very murky, it can get very dangerous. right? So I try to keep that
But
space.
Will, you can share anything with me. I'm your friend before I work with you.
I understand that.
I'm your day one. Come on. We go back.
I'm your day one. What? You want to fight, John?
I do. Only because I'm curious about where to go.
But yeah, so
and also because you want to put yourself in conflict.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good excuse to get into conflict. Say it. Say everything you want to say to Elise.
That's it.
But yeah, like I try to respect that space. So I find myself a lot of times not totally opening up to my peers and my colleagues because I'm like, I have to respect that space. But going back to the answer, so I was talking about improv scenes coming from life experience. So what I try to do is to open up my life experience as much as possible. And that becomes my therapy as I continue to try to be a lifetime, whatever student. So traveling has been a big, it keeps my mind fresh. Like, and I'm not, to constantly experience new things changes me as a human and it changes me as an improviser, right? And I love being a student of new things because that for me has been the most formative for me as an improviser. Like just in the last couple of years, I gained like a certificate in conflict mediation, and that has informed me as an improviser. Then recently, a fitness certificate and training, and that's informed me as an improviser. So those have
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So those have been my how could I put it? Those are the things that have kept me mentally healthy. Like a lot of my improv friends, like a lot of my improv friends don't know that I have this whole other circle of friends that are outside of improv, which is very important for me. Again, I find it very dangerous to cross those streams. So Elise,
I know they're out there, Will. I know they are.
Elise, if you and I want to become better friends, you have to stop doing improv. Sorry.
Okay.
No, don't.
That's it.
Round
one. Keep Johnstone on deck.
No, mute
improv.
But that's
great.
That's kind of like what's got me through it. I have those things, and of course, family. Right, like my kids have taught me a lot. Right.
How old? What ages?
They are 11 and soon to be 8. And the 8-year-old is the future improviser.
Yes, she is.
She has it. It's already like my 11-year-old, love her, but she's if she goes into theater, it's gonna be a scripted thing. It's gonna be like tell me where I need to be, what line I come in on. What do I need to do?
She likes the work. She likes to be like, I'm a professional. I need to do this. Tell me what time, and I need to understand everything.
Yes. And whereas Layla's just like, screw it. I'm here. Let me just get on stage and do my thing. So, So that being a father's taught me a lot.
You have now, like you said, you have been improvising for over 20 years and you've been married for 11 and you've had children for at least 10.
Yeah.
24.
I know that.
Years.
I know that John. I know that his kids are 10 because I see them and I go to their birthday parties.
Okay. 11 and 8, I thought, but I don't know.
Okay, I said at least 10.
Okay.
Anyway.
No, you'd be great. You're a great day one. Yeah.
It's fine. I want to know what it's been like as a professional who was able to manage all of that. Traveling also, I know you travel with them sometimes, so that's nice. Let me get this dog off of me right quick. Get off, bro. She won't get.
Dog's confused.
You travel. She's hard rocking me real bad right now. You travel with your family sometimes, or I feel like I don't see that example often, right? Like I feel like as a performer and somebody who wants to work a lot, like I want to work a lot. I want to do things. I want to be able to have it all, as one would say. Oh my gosh, that should be your housewife's tagline. How has that been? Like what, just any reflection you have on all of that?
Sure. Yeah. I've had a lot of friends who, for some reason, I don't know where they got this from, but for some reason they assume that their life ends the moment they have kids. I'll never forget like a coworker who was pregnant at the same time my wife was pregnant. So, and I worked for a tech company, a financial tech company in Boston. And she already said, she's like, my child's gonna be born in a couple of months, and then that's it for me. Like that's it. She listed the thing that she was cutting out of her life.
It's a woman. It was a woman.
She was a woman, yes. And then
that explains it more.
She was just like, and then like, but then Maria and I, my wife and I, from pre-day one, before our first kid was born, we kind of told ourselves, we're like, we want to live our life with our kids, not around our kids, right? And so obviously make accommodations for our kids when necessary, but we also want them to experience what we experience so that they know their parents, all right? And you know, the good and the bad, like you know, they'll know what they like and what they don't like.
They'll see you as complete humans.
Yeah, and so that's been a big part of parenting for me is like if I go on a trip and I can take them, I'm taking them. If I'm going to an event that is kid friendly or kid acceptable, like I will take them with me. I am not going to hide. I mean, obviously, you know, they don't need to know about like, you know, when Maria and I are talking about bills or, you know, when Maria and I go on a date night, like obviously that's its own thing, but that's 10% of the full adulting parenting experience. The rest of it, I don't mind sharing with my kids and living with them and living it with them. So that's been a big part of it, and I one thing that I've learned now as a dad, especially with an 11-year-old, is, you know, God bless my daughter. Like she is, for better or for worse, she's a daddy's girl. Like she will, whatever I say or suggest or whatever, she will do it. And I see her struggling with it because she's like, ugh, like I don't want to do this, but I love my dad. So recently, my recent parenting thing has been to teach my daughter to stand up to me. Like I'm telling her this. I'm like, if you don't agree with me, if you do not like this, I want you to tell me. And I don't want you to be afraid to stand up to me, because I think that's going to be very valuable. I feel like, you know, like I feel like that's going to be valuable for her moving up forward, right? Like I want her to be like, I stood up to my dad, therefore I could stand up against to anyone.
And
right?
not just I stood up to my dad and then I could stand up to anyone, but also I stood up to my dad and it was fine.
Yes.
And then I could stand up to anyone.
That's right. Yes.
I stood up to my dad. It was fine. And my dad beat up Keith Johnstone. So what does that say about me as an 8-year-old? I'm going places.
Yep.
I have the same relationship with my dad where we are completely politically opposed. And every time something happens, I call him and I call him a loser. Like I'll laugh in his face and he'll be like, all right. So that's really great.
That's awesome.
You know, you have kids, suddenly you start to cut the fat. You're like, okay, all this other bullshit I used to worry about, like, like all that's gone. Like that doesn't matter anymore, because this matters. This matters. My family matters, right? And all the global things that are important to me. And let me focus on the important stuff, because this is the stuff that affects my kids directly. Right. Yeah. Like I made a post about it, and, you know, for better or for worse, like the one thing I'm like, I know a lot of people do like diarrhea on social media. They just like post everything. But like, I try to be very careful about what I post.
Keith Johnstone,
like calling him out. Right. But like, even during the Black Lives Matter movement, like I need to like, my kids had questions, and like, I needed to think about it. I'm like, okay, like I want to make sure that I answer this in an impactful way that means a lot to them, and that they understand the societal and global perspective of what is happening right now, right? And so, in a way, like if I didn't have kids, I wouldn't have to really go through that whole process. But having kids really made me kind of think about this, right? And that, like, I'm not just gonna, you know, you join my peers and you know, support the movement. I want it to have long-term standing impact. And I want my kids to know why I'm doing this. And not only that, they joined. I mean, they were out there. They went to protests, and it means something to them now. So anyway, yeah.
That's beautiful. I'm choked up, but I'm gonna suppress my feelings for. No, I'm just kidding. No, that is incredibly profound because we're multidimensional people, and I don't know. I'm discovering this too. But Elise and I, we talk about like we want to show the whole artist, the whole BIPOC artist, the whole person. You know, and I think that's just like. I don't know. It's regular to you, but because there's such a deficit of hearing about quote unquote regular, you know,
it's not unusual.
Yeah. So this is under the umbrella of and I hate saying it because it almost waters down the statement. Representation is important, but I want to talk about a case where an example where it is important. So for me, first time ever leaving the country to do improv was the time that Will was there in Amsterdam. And so we've been talking about travel and doing improv. It's a whole thing unto itself. I think from the perspective of folks who are doing improv in the States or just in the country that they're in, they have one view of like improv. But my whole paradigm of improv shattered I felt very, very fortunate and very grateful. But I also felt like because I had an all black group, so it just felt like, well, we got into this fest. It is in Amsterdam, and we were talking about harm reduction. I was like, this whole trip, for whatever reason, feels like it's going to be a giant microaggression. It's going to really be hurtful. And this is right when Trump was inaugurated. The Pussy Hat March was happening. This was, what is it, 2017? Yeah, 2017, January. So we get to Amsterdam, and I don't know how to like figure it out. Like with most festivals in improv, you can just go to the festival coordinator, whatever, and they can kind of like help you socialize or meet people, right? And we got there, let's just say it was a Monday. There was no shows for like 3 or 4 days, and we stayed in a hostel. I had never stayed in a hostel before. First off, that's a weird name. I didn't even know that was like a hotel for a thing. Why are people are so happy? And then I realized like, oh yeah, this is like what working class poor Europeans or traveling people do. So I had to learn so much just to go on this trip. There was like so many things that I think that I didn't know. But I say all this to say like I was pissed for like a few days because I was like, man, we're just in this hostel. I feel like we should get a guide. I feel like, you know, something, right? To just be like, hey, welcome. And not that I felt like we were entitled to it, but I felt a little bit like, hey, y'all, read the room. We're all black. We're in your country. And, you know, in hindsight, that was just insight for me. But I was just like, wow, these festivals really operate on a white timetable. Like it just goes white, 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 white. And then if you're other, in their heart, most of them, right, they're just like, okay, well, I acknowledge that, but we don't speak about it. So our group was all black and we talked about it. So I was like ready to talk to the festival guy. Sven is his name. Sven. I love Sven. Yeah. We have a running joke in the group chat about how old he is. It's like Sven's so old, you know, fill in the blank. Great. I love Sven. But until that night, there was a cast that you were a part of. The festival has like a main stage kind of cast, and they perform every night with a different director, different format. You kind of work with your cast. It's a great experience. And I was like, all right, so this sounds weird, but I was like, fuck, man, we don't perform till like Saturday. We came here on a Monday. I wish I would have known, first off, that I wouldn't be doing much of anything, but I wish I would have just taken in the city or meet other improvisers, a.k.a. Will. Like, I wish I would have met Will. But I'm just speaking of this because it was so powerful. My mood went from like, I just can't wait for us to do our show and go back home because I feel like we're just invited to this thing as like a cute, like, yeah, this would be cute to have on the bill. These black, you know, there's the Dutch. Yeah, black. They're black. They're just black. It's just the race. It's just the color. So anyway, I was feeling so dejected. I felt a little bit like responsible to because the team. I was like, I brought you guys into this. I felt like that. But now the show starts and boom, I just see a brown man on stage. Right away, I was like, holy shit, I didn't know you at the time, but I was like, this is almost an anomaly, unfortunately. And then, because they're like, we're bringing the cast. They welcome the cast, everybody, and we're used to it as BIPOC. We're like, yep, here comes the white.
Yeah,
the white show, and hopefully we'll pick some things that we really appreciated and move on. And we like good theater. But I saw Will, and the format was crazy because, the audience picks who the love couple is going to be, and I decided because they asked like who in the audience would like to choose. I was like, me. So I think the first person was this male, Romer, who's like 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah.
He's Dutch's
very
gift
Dutch
to the world.
Yeah.
Very educated. He's like, oh yeah, I've got the degree in that. Sure. But and then they were like, okay, now we're gonna pick the love interest. My call, by the way, but the audience, they really wanted it to be a woman. So they really wanted a heteronormative kind of relationship. And I was like, nope, brown man got this. He's got this. So I would pick Will and Romer to be the love interest in this like and the audience, you could feel them audibly want to police my choice. First off, They were like, I was like, no, they picked me. And I also made that choice as a vote of confidence because it was just like, I want you to be the main character regardless of whatever the gender stereotypes was, and you showed up, and we just knew you was gonna like kill it because we saw the previews, I believe, with your group Bang, and I was like,
Big Bang,
yes, but the difficulty with the when you're an ensemble cast, you don't have that kind of familiarity. But I was like, I at least want this brown man to be the center, and I got to give that. So it felt like, for me, it was like the biggest like turnaround because it was like, oh, I'm about to quit improv part 2. But the way you really like, you did that thing where it wasn't, you weren't fatiguing yourself out trying to play with white people and do that thing, where it's like, I want to, you were just like, I have total control of myself, and you were doing all the things that makes a great scene partner, and I just was like, what the fuck? I'm aware of what I'm witnessing. There's a different show. Everybody else was just watching a beautiful love story. I was seeing the amount of like skill that it took for you to, and if you're an actor, you understand all the elements to it. Like, you gotta, where's your body? Where did they say? Maybe your scene partner was nervous, which they were, and you had to do all those things. And I was like, fuck, there it is. That is something I have never. I love Joe Bernard, like really good friend, tight friend, but I just have never seen a brown or black person, bring that magic. And I mean, it's really cool that Elise and I get to work with you.
So what I hear is that John is trying to once again vie to be your day one, and I will.
No, but in all sincerity, with that affected me. So your point of view, you were just doing what you're doing. You just like working. But there's just something to be said about like, has that happened to you before? Where you just are clearly aware, like, okay, I'm going to have to, I don't know how to say this better, but be the one that carries this for these white people. And the cast has trust, but we know that when you travel, they're going to look at you, right? And they go, okay. You kind of have to earn their respect, And Europeans came up to me with that. That's why I know this. They were like, your show was good. You guys, at the first 15 minutes, I was worried. So what's going on?
The fuck?
Yeah, no, it's just the Dutch. That's what they kept saying. The Dutch, they're honest. And I was like, cool, man. But you're going to be a dick. Anyways, I said a lot, but that's...
I appreciate you saying that. First of all, thank you so much, John. Like, that show is still very memorable, and having the opportunity to hang with you those days in Amsterdam was awesome. And I think it was that same year when we saw ourselves again in Boston, which is when the two of you.
That's where I come in.
Boston and Portland, real quick, Portland,
Stumptown, right?
Yes.
That's right. We saw ourselves in Stumptown, and then a month later in Boston.
That's right. I gave you a gummy. You can cut this out if you want, but I
know. Oh man. I talk about that gummy. I talk about that because that got me, because I had to take a red-eye flight back.
Yes.
And I remember taking the gummy and being nervous. I believe you might have given me 2 gummies, or maybe somebody else gave me
Sounds
another
like
one.
me. No,
One
for the road.
because I had 2, and like I get to the airport and I got nervous, and so I'm just like, I take them both. I slept so well on that flight.
You took them both?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh
That's
yeah,
bold.
because it was a red-eye flight. I'm like, forget it. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't need to watch a movie, right?
Yeah.
Out, and then I was out.
And you've flown enough that is muscle memory. You know how to go from gate to door
exactly.
I have literally seen Will sleep through takeoff and landing.
Wow. Yeah.
It's an art.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's
But
an
yeah,
art.
I appreciate that, John. And yeah, man, like I have found myself so often in that situation where I do feel like, you know, I'm pretty humble in the craft, but there are times, I think one of my, if I were to say strengths in this art form, is that, and I honestly attribute a lot of this to like my physics background, is that I'm able to take like multiple perspectives and facts and be like, okay, this person just said this person said this, they are in this location. Okay, what can I do? And I'll take all of that and then I'll square it, and then I'll have it all make sense. Like now everything that didn't make sense makes sense. Let's all have fun in this scene together.
Yeah.
Right. And like that, I feel like that's one of my strengths. But I do, and I was just talking to Stephanie Ray about this a few days ago, like how it is, I think one of the things that, and I was telling Stephanie, I'm like, one of the things that BIPOC need to carry on stage, and for Stephanie as a woman, she has to carry 2 of these things. So like for Elise as well, is that people see you enter the stage. People see a BIPOC person enter the stage. And when I say people, I'm saying a predominantly white audience sees you enter the stage. They already have created the narrative and the storylines in their heads.
Yeah.
Right. And like now I have to come in and I have to deprogram you to understand like what you're thinking right now, whether it is conscious or unconscious, right? What your mind, the way your mind is trying to frame this,
It's dumb.
And now I need to deprogram that quickly, right? And I say that as a BIPOC person, but I think it's doubly so as a BIPOC woman, because they're not only saying like BIPOC, and they're also saying woman, therefore this is what you're gonna be, right? And so like I definitely feel that like I'm carrying that in. I've got to I have to reframe, and I think we've all 3 of us have been through this of that reframing, and that for me is like, that is my lifelong work now, is like the reframing of audiences' expectations. Like I don't want you to see somebody enter on stage and you to think what role they should play, A, and B, going to the other side, right? I don't want you as a BIPOC performer to think, and I'm speaking of this as someone who went through this. I don't want you as a BIPOC performer to think that you need to play in a specific way to be successful on stage. I want you to be you. I want you to bring your life experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Not be ashamed to just bring it out on stage. Because guess what? That is normal. That is normal. You don't need to filter it through Monty Python. You don't need to filter it right through Dana Carvey or whatever, or Kevin Nealon or whatever. No, your life experience is valid, and so and it is entertaining. So bring it. Let's just bring it out. It's not the first weird thing or anything. That is improv. What you experienced, bring it out and let's do it. So anyway,
beautiful.
Woo.
Great. On that note, is there anything else that you want to share, Willie?
I think I got a lot of the things that are important to me as an improviser out there. I love your podcast. I very much thank you for having me on, and
Thank you for being here.
Anytime that anyone wants to reach out and chat, they can. I'm sure you'll post this wherever.
Yep.
WillLuera.com. Yeah, thank you. So, and I might not be the quickest to respond to your emails, but once I do, I'll send you my mobile number. You can just texting is a lot better for me. But I try to be, any way that I can help and any way that I can assist.
Wait, anybody get every number?
Anybody can, sure, yeah.
Let's just post it right now. The number is sitting.
Whoa.
I'm kidding.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, thank you, Will. I love you very much.
Yeah. I love you both. Thank you very much. I love you, Elise. Love you.
Thank you. I love you. And before we go, I know we're leaving, but just here's a visual. I need you, Will, to kind of describe this from a physics standpoint. What is going on? Because this looks beautiful, but on a physics level, what's happening?
Sure, yeah. So like that big bright thing on the right-hand side, that's the sun, and it's going through like an internal combustion that is radiating heat and light. And we are lucky enough to live on a planet that not only is in the perfect area to receive that heat and light, right? But it also had like the perfect combination of chemicals, right? Yes. And materials, right? Of like water and land and moisture. Not only that, here's the thing. It kept its atmosphere. That way that we don't lose like all of that stuff, right? It kind of keeps it intact. It takes 8 minutes for the light, right? I think we all know this, right? It takes 8 minutes for the light to reach the earth, right? We all know that, right? Yeah. So it keeps the earth nice and warm, and I love how you see how it's tilted here. How the earth is tilted. So right now it is summer in the southern hemisphere and winter in the northern hemisphere. I also see that there's a lot of. I also see a lot of lights here. There's electricity, a lot of. So there's a lot of pollution happening, but that's okay. Anyway, it's a great.
So everyone, just to clarify, he's describing a picture of God.
Yeah, this is God. Oh yes, it is.
Oh, thank you very much, Will.
Thank you both.
Woo.
That's a wrap.
Will Luera.
Thank you, Wheelie.
Thank you.
Wasn't that nice? For more on Will Luera and his upcoming workshops, visit www.will-luera.com. Thanks for hanging with us. Make sure to follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Elise and John Show. Hasta la próxima.